Hello, and welcome back to the Joy Within's podcast. Today, I want to share a concept that I like to call the thought, belief, emotional triangle. This is a mental framework that I use that helps me to visualize the interplay that happens among my thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. And it helps me to see the impact that they have on the actions that I take and the results that I get from those actions. I think this framework is fundamental to pretty much everything that we do. It is always there, working in the background, either helping to propel us forward towards our goals, towards the change that we want in our lives, or it keeps us feeling trapped, stuck in the same cycles. I think it's really powerful because working with our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions often seems intangible. It can feel really wishy-washy at times. And I think having this framework in place really helps me to stay grounded so that I can better understand what is actually going on inside of my mind. I also think that it helps because it shows how our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are different aspects of ourselves that work in tandem in order to create our potential actions and results. And I know for me, for years, I was consistently frustrated with all of these different systems that are out there that would try to work with just changing your thoughts, or just trying to feel better, or just focusing on building beliefs. But I always found that they were spotty. They didn't always work. And eventually I realized it's because they're incomplete. We have to view these three things together if we want to create change. They pull on each other, and when we improve one of them, I find that we can only go so far until we have to pivot and work on one of the others. So I think we have to treat our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions as three parts of a single unit, and that's what this framework helps us to do. So first, I will give an overview of what this concept is, and then I'll give you a few examples of how we can use it and apply it for ourselves. Welcome to The Joy Within. I'm Kyle Greenfield, and I believe that you have the ability to become calm, confident, and happy anytime that you choose. Some days, that's easier than others, but with the right tools and the right way of thinking, we can unlock incredible states of joy, peace, and well-being within us. So visit thejoywithin.org to get started today, so that together we can create a happier and more peaceful world. Okay, so to begin, what actually is the thought, belief, emotional triangle? Like, what do I mean by that? And I think for me, I like to think of it as a simplified representation of the often messy, often intertangled web of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that we face every single day. As we go about our day, every day, we think constantly, we feel constantly, and we are constantly drawing upon the different beliefs that we hold. We're just not always aware of it. Actually, I think we're almost never aware of it. I think this mechanism usually happens in the background, but we are always engaging with these three aspects of ourselves. And each of these three parts has the ability to impact the other two. So we can think about the system as a triangle. Our thoughts have a direct and often immediate impact on the way that we feel. Over time, repeated thoughts create our beliefs, and in any given moment, our thoughts can evoke or draw on a specific belief that we already hold. We do this automatically every day. When something frustrates you, for example, it's not actually the thing that is frustrating. It's that you're automatically, unconsciously, calling up a belief. In the back of the mind, something is going on that sounds like, oh no, not this again. I hate when this happens. I can never get this right. This is so annoying. The thing triggers a thought, which pulls up a belief, which then dictates how you feel. Think about it. We all do this, all day, every day. Anyway, our existing beliefs also constrain the thoughts that we have available to us. We're almost always thinking within the context of beliefs that we hold, either consciously or unconsciously. Those beliefs then determine many of our emotional responses to the world. It's not just that we randomly feel frustrated. We feel frustrated because we believe, I can't do it. Like, this never goes smoothly, or this is really hard work. Generally speaking, when we face circumstances that grate against one of our beliefs, we tend to feel negative. But when they confirm a belief, we tend to feel more positive, more confident, and more empowered. Similarly, our emotions influence which thoughts are available to us in any given moment. This impact is usually more specific, more in the moment, than the constraint imposed by our beliefs. So imagine our thoughts as a big buffet of food. If our beliefs dictate what food is on that buffet, the range of possible thoughts available to us, then our emotions will tell us what food we are actually putting on our plate, which thoughts we actually activate right now. And really, emotions have the ability to make or break our beliefs. And I think sometimes this connection can be hard to see. So, the way to imagine this is to think about stories of people who kept trying to quit smoking or to lose weight and just couldn't. Until one day something just clicks, like it hits them, like, if I don't make a change, I might not be alive to see my grandchildren. And then, just like that, they immediately have a shift. They have a deep, visceral response. It's an emotional reaction. And in that moment, the strong emotion breaks the belief that they couldn't change. It doesn't have to be something that extreme, but the point is to illustrate that our emotions can break our beliefs. In normal, everyday life, these interactions between our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions happen seamlessly, and most of the time we don't pay any attention to them. But instead of thinking of them as a messy, intractable web, we can simplify these connections into a triangle with 3 bidirectional legs of influence. So it goes both ways on every single leg, meaning we can use any one point of the triangle to influence any other point of that triangle. So thinking in this way, we can always know where our point of control is anytime we want to make a change. And we always have a choice about where we want to begin. So for example, if we want to change how we feel, we can start with changing our thoughts. Or we can start with our beliefs. We can choose to draw upon, to focus on a positive belief that we hold. And this is what happens when we, say, use a positive affirmation. If we're frustrated and we call up thoughts like, you know what? I can do this. I can figure this out. Then we'll feel better. If, and this is a big if, we actually believe that we can do it. So usually when we're frustrated, we know that we can do it. It's just that in that moment, we feel blocked. There's a temporary circumstance that makes us feel like we can't. But fundamentally, we have an empowering belief. So when that happens, we can use our thoughts to remind ourselves that, yeah, we can figure this out, which draws on a positive belief that we can do it, which makes us feel better. But if we don't have that empowering belief, if it's something that we don't actually believe that we can do, then trying to think, I've got this, will actually call up a negative belief, and you'll feel worse. Fundamentally, this is what happens to us every single day with every thought that we think, every mood that we feel. And I think understanding how this mechanism works, seeing this as this interdependent thought, belief, emotional triangle, gives us the ability to recognize where our point of power lies in any given situation. So we can have a simple map for how to make the positive change that we want. But I think there's one more key factor here. So our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are the frame of the triangle, the 3 sides. But the reason this framing is so important is because of what is within the triangle, what's at the center. And that's where our actions, and consequently the results that we get from life, come into play. And I often like to zoom one step out from that and imagine that the area of this triangle is my current available potential. The reason is because we can think of the sum total of our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions as constraints that we put on ourselves and the way that we experience our lives. So we all have these constraints, and there's no getting around that. But we do get to choose what those constraints are. We get to choose what field we play on, so to speak, the space that we can operate within. So the inside of this triangle represents the potential choices that are available to us, the potential actions we could take, the potential results we could get, in whatever area of life that we choose to apply this to. So when we think, believe, and feel one way, we have a certain set of options available to us. But if we were to shift, when we create new beliefs, new perspectives, or new responses to the world, then we expand our triangle, and we open ourselves to a different set of possibilities. What those other options are, whether they're better or worse, is ultimately up to you to decide. The point here is to see that your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, when taken together, create the frame, the lens, through which you view and respond to the world. So for example, let's imagine someone who feels overcome by failure. They keep looking at where they are, they see that they aren't where they want to be, and so they think thoughts about how much they've failed. Those thoughts remind them of other times in their life when they've failed, and they activate a deeply held belief that they just can't do anything. And that makes them feel like a failure even more. This is a horrible, vicious cycle to be in, but let's think about it objectively for a moment. What does this person do? What are their actions? chances are they don't do anything. The person probably feels depressed, so they don't take action to change their situation. So the situation doesn't change. So they keep feeling depressed, and they keep not taking action, and they stay stuck exactly where they are. They're trapped. I'd even argue that so long as they're trapped in this failure triangle, if you want to think of it that way, then they can't even see, they can't even imagine actions that don't reinforce their current state. It's like everything that they could potentially do is governed by the question, what would a failure do? That's the lens they're looking through. That's their playing field. That's the triangle they're trapped within. Now, obviously, there are other options. There are other actions that this person could take. And you can probably imagine some of them. But you can only imagine them because right now, you are not trapped in that same failure triangle. Maybe you are thinking from a calm, detached emotional state. Or maybe you have a belief that anyone can learn anything if they put their mind to it. But that's your perspective. That's a different set of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. So someone who is steeped in failure cannot do that. At least not in the moments when that thought, belief, emotional system is pressing in on them. Not when they have activated that specific system. In fact, that person has no choice but to remain trapped by that system until he changes one of those 3 points. If you're dealing with stress and negativity in your life, the Joy Within can help. Our membership program provides a clear path to reduce stress and cultivate more joy in your life by showing you how to get out of your own way. When we learn to quiet that annoying little voice in our head, we allow a natural sense of joy, peace, and well-being to shine from within. Our program activates that joy within you by combining clear insights and simple actions with personal accountability and a plan that we customize to work for you. Best of all, it's free to get started. So head over to thejoywithin.org/join to sign up today. That's thejoywithin.org/join. Now, back to the show. The way I like to think of this is I like to think of these thought, belief, emotional triangles as little mini systems of reality, which we create for ourselves. The longer we stay within any one system, the more that system reinforces itself to us, and it becomes harder and harder to break free from it. Often, these constraints mean that we can't even see where, how, or why we are trapped, precisely because we cannot step out of the system to observe and evaluate it. Other times, we don't pay attention to these systems because we are constantly shifting between different thought, belief, and emotional triangles. So it's like we pop in and out of focusing on different stories, different emotions, different beliefs all of the time. Think about it. You probably have one triangle, one set of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that you step into during the day at work, and then another when you come home to your family, and another when you're with your friends, or another when you're out playing a sport. Or imagine you're just sitting at home and you're totally calm when a bill comes and it triggers you. You probably jump into a completely different system if that bill triggers some financial fear within you. Or if you step on the bathroom scale and it just stubbornly stays stuck on the same number over and over again. You can pop in and out of these different states for different areas of your life. And I like thinking about these systems in this way because it helps us to see, firstly, that none of the triangles is permanent. They're more like phases that we move through. Secondly, we're actually really adept, we're really good at moving among them. We usually do it many, many times within each day, which means that we have the ability to change. And lastly, it shows us that we can use these different systems, different versions of ourselves, to reshape negative, disempowering systems into more positive ones, or to stack parts of one triangle together to create a new one, so we have a new experience for our lives. If you're having trouble picturing this, I like to imagine a fractal, where every triangle in the fractal is by itself a complete unit, but also makes up one part of many other triangles put together. And when we look at the whole, it creates a bigger picture of who you are and the way you experience your life. So the beliefs that you hold about money, for example, might be one triangle. The self-concept that you have of your health or your physical fitness is another. Your relationships are another. But then you could also niche down any one of these, and you could say, well, I don't just have thoughts, beliefs, and emotions about relationships broadly. I have one set for my family, and I have another set for relationships at work, and so forth. And within that, well, Actually, I hold really specific beliefs about how nerdy Bob is, and how annoying Karen is, and how nice Michelle is. And for each one of these, I have these mini sets of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that shape how I am triggered by them and how I respond to them every single day. So we can niche down and see one specific set of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, or we can stack them together to see how, as a whole, they create our entire identity, our entire personality, and the way we allow ourselves to be in the world. So once we kind of have this picture, then we can start to work with it to create change that we prefer. And one of the reasons that I like the image of a triangle is because you can never move only one side. If you change any one leg, you always have to change another. In the same way, to make any meaningful change in our inner triangles, we have to leverage two of the sides to exert change upon the third. Because one point will only be able to shift any other one point a little bit at a time. Because triangles are constrained. No one side can be longer than the combination of the other two. So let's think about that failure example again. Imagine you're feeling like a failure, and you want to change the way that you feel. So to change your emotion, you can think different thoughts. You could use affirmations, you could do a positive rampage, you could read something inspiring. All of this will shift your emotions by activating certain thoughts within you. And you can imagine this is like pumping energy, pumping length through that thought emotion side of the triangle. And you can do this up to a point, but then you'll hit a wall, which means maybe you try to think positively, but those positive thoughts no longer make you feel any better. Maybe you even recoil from them and they make you feel worse. That's the indication that you've gone as far as you can with that one side for now. So imagine a triangle with one really long side. You can only stretch that side so far before the triangle breaks. So in this example, we can start with that thought-emotional connection, but if we really want to change, you have to engage the underlying beliefs as well. So what does this mean in practice? Well, in this example, it might mean that you can use positive thinking to pump yourself up in the moment. So maybe you move from feeling like a failure and not being able to do anything, thinking your next task is pointless, to still believing you're a failure, but having some hope, which means in this moment you can motivate yourself enough to take action on the task in front of you. So you feel like a failure, but you're still moving forward. And really, this has only changed your emotional state right now. It hasn't done anything to combat the underlying belief of failure. You've only treated the surface level symptom. So if you haven't changed the belief, then any amount of resistance, the slightest reminder or implication that you are not doing well at your task, that you're not getting the results that you want, will probably send you spiraling back to that feeling of being a failure. And this is why most people don't use positive thinking effectively, because they try to think positively, but they only treat one side of the triangle. So it kind of works for a moment, but it has no real lasting impact. Now, let's look at what happens when we can work on two legs at once. So same situation, you're feeling down and unmotivated because you feel like a failure. And you might start out just as we did. You try to think positively, you listen to a motivational recording, and let's say that that's enough right now to get you off the couch. So you're not totally depressed. You can probably get a few things done, but you're still not really feeling it. You're just going through the motions. So then we can turn towards the belief. We're in a good enough state now that maybe we can find just a little bit of evidence that you're not a total failure. I mean, maybe you point to a success that you had in the past, or maybe you look at some of the progress that you've made, even if that progress isn't the real success that you want or the real metric that you want to use. It can just be a pointer that some things do actually work out for you. Or you could look at a completely different area of your life. If you feel like a failure about work, for example, you might point to your family or your friends or your health. The point is that you can start to find just enough evidence to help you say, okay, so I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not a total failure. So I guess I have a few things going for me. Now think about what that does to your triangle. Pushing that belief up in this way lengthens that leg. So it then gives you more of a base that you can use to shift your emotions further. I know this is a bit hard to visualize on a podcast, but in the first example, when we only worked with our thoughts and emotions, imagine that's like just stretching out one leg and having a really lopsided triangle. But imagine that now, since we're working on the beliefs too, instead of just stretching out that one leg and having a really lopsided triangle, we're stretching the triangle out more evenly, so the triangle is expanding more stably. The idea is you can keep working in this way, inching your emotions up, then strengthening your belief just a little bit, just by deliberately working with your thoughts. And pretty soon, you enter into this virtual spiral, and your beliefs and your emotions start exerting positive pressure on each other to keep expanding, which changes your thoughts further, and so on and so forth. All because you knew which levers to pull when. I hope this is making sense. In that example, we use deliberate thought as the main point of control. For most people, I think that's the easiest place to start, and it's often easiest to see how our thoughts in this moment can have an impact on our emotions and our beliefs. But I want to be clear that you could start to work from any of the 3 points of the triangle. So for example, let's say that you feel like a failure and you're thinking thoughts of failure, but you also have a really strong belief that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. Or no matter what happens, you can learn how to do anything. So even if your thoughts are steeped in your current failure, you could you could activate that firm belief in your ability to learn to start your process. If you focus on that underlying belief for a moment, it probably shifts your mood, which gives you access to different thoughts. And you can approach the process from that angle, always coming back to the belief as the foundation that you work from. Or similarly, you could work from your point of emotion. So maybe you can't change your thoughts, and maybe you don't have an empowering belief, but you can go meditate for a few minutes, which helps you to clear your mind so that you're not drawing on your current thoughts or beliefs. And that creates a calmer feeling within you. Then, when you're calmer, you can go back and you can rebuild your thoughts and you can reconsider your beliefs from that calmer state. How you work with this triangle is going to depend on you and the situation that you're in. But the point is that when we think in this way, it gives us options. Thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are the levers that we can pull. But we still have to have the tools and the awareness in order to do it. But I think that's out of the scope for today. So thank you so much for listening. I really hope that today's episode has given you a new way to think about your inner world. I know we covered a lot, and I know there are a lot of moving parts here. So this might be an episode that you just kind of let settle. You just mull it over for a few days, and then you come back and listen again. And I think you'll get more out of it on a second or even a third listen. Because, at least for me, I believe that part of our inner growth is about stretching the ways in which we think, the types of perspectives that we open ourselves into, and literally just hearing something and letting it sit around in the back of our minds for a while can then lead us into new insights later. And I hope that today's episode can help to do that for you. If you want to go deeper, if you want to learn the tools and the strategies to start to apply this framework and create change, then you can head over to thejoywithin.org/join, where I have a ton of different trainings and guided techniques that will help you to pull these different levers, to push out the legs of your triangle, so to speak, so that you can expand the actions and the responses that you have open to you. So that's thejoywithin.org/join. Thanks again for your time. Know that I love you and I appreciate you wherever you are. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to The Joy Within. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do what you can to spread the word. I believe that we all deserve to feel calm, confident, and happy literally every single day. But with everything that's going on in the world, we need to work together to remind ourselves of that in as many little ways as we can. So please, pass this along to the people you care about. Email a friend, share it on social, do whatever feels right for you, so that hopefully, together, we can create a little more peace in our crazy modern world.